Hello, my lonely trollops. I'm here today with a review of Mss Mcknz by Anthony Trllp, an 1865 novel, part of the Lonely Trollop read along that's happening this year. This is a lonely trollop because I'm just doing it independently. I picked out Mss Mcknz as a manageable novel to read in the month of September for Anthony Trllp. I'm doing one a month. So Mss Mcknz is all about a young woman. Well, no, not a young woman. A woman who is 35. She has spent most of her adult life nursing first her dying father and then her invalid brother Walter, who is the older brother and had inherited all the money from the father. Tom, the younger brother, went into the oilcloth trade and is sort of the black sheep of the family. They don't really want to do much to do with him because he's in the trades, which is terrible of this, that class of things, especially if you're kind of, well, I don't know, just the English class system stuff. But Walter dies, and he does not leave his money to Tom. He leaves all of his money to Margaret, to Mss Mcknz, and suddenly she finds herself at the old withered age of 35, wealthy, independently wealthy. And she's got to decide sort of like what she would like to do. She spent all of her life, nursing other people, taking care of other people. She now gets to enjoy life for herself. And on the advice of a doctor, she ends up moving to a town called Littlebath, which seems to be it's modeled after Bath, Somerset Bath. Where people go for the waters and just to kind of relax, and it's got kind of two sides. As she comes to the town, she finds it's got two sides. On one side, there's the evangelicals, who are very much like against partying, smoking, playing cards, dancing, all that sort of stuff. And on the other side, there's like more kind of like, oh, let's have fun, party, stuff like that. She actually does get to know the evangelicals in the community, especially Mr. Stumford and Mrs. Stumford, who he's the pastor, and he's very kind of jolly good fellow, and Mrs. Stumford seems to be the kind of enforcer of the thing, and they have a curate, Mr. McGuire, who is very handsome, except he has kind of a squint in one eye, and is also seems to be a bit of a grasping fellow. And indeed, as this novel goes on, Mss Mcknz, who people really haven't paid much attention to, she is not a great beauty, but like a lot of kind of Trllp heroines, she's got personality, and while she comes off as kind of meek, maybe quiet, when people think that's meek and maybe weak, she's got her kind of her own kind of spirit, and won't, when push comes to shove, she will shove back. Now into this, because she has the money now, the Tom Mcknz's partner Samuel Rubb comes around and is sort of getting to know her, and he's a youngerish man as well, who it's like kind of being charming with her, getting to know her, kind of talking a lot about her money, and indeed he ends up getting a loan from her for the business. So it's mostly going, she sees it as mostly kind of going to help her brother Tom, who, though he's gone into the trades, he hasn't actually really been a great businessman. He's used up any money that he is inherited, and they're sort of always sort of just scraping by at this point. So she's like, feels like, okay, it's kind of obligation on her part to do it, and she doesn't bother to wait for kind of the legal stuff for the business to be used as collateral to secure the loan. So she loans the money, and the loan never does get secured. And Samuel Rubb, does something which, it's one of these things of like, if he'd done small little lies and kind of just things like that, she'd think a lot worse of him. But he comes to her and says like, look, I'm sorry, we've already secured the loan. We've already secured the business and all that because of all these other loans that we had. I should have told you, I lied. I'm really sorry. I throw myself at your feet, which she actually finds rather like, oh, she finds that kind of level. If you're going to go big, you go home, and that he admits to it. He actually she finds kind of like, oh, that's actually somewhat appealing. And as a third, there's a third suitor in this, John Ball, who is, the Balls are sort of the other half of the family. Indeed, there's a lot of hard feeling between the Balls and the Mckenzies, because the money that went to Walter, there's always been kind of a dispute that money actually should have gone to the Ball side of things. And indeed, John Ball, who married, he's had apparently nine kids, has always sort of kind of labored on the thing of like his life would have been a lot different if that money had fell the other way. They actually do get along well. John Ball has a mother, Lady Ball, and a really sarcastic kind of mean father. His father is sarcastic and mean, but he is actually kind of this kind of amiable 50-year-old guy, kind of fairly decent, and maybe with a bit of prodding from Lady Ball, he actually does propose. He proposes to Margaret, and it's like, but she's like, I don't think I really feel that much towards you, so no, I'm not going to marry you. And indeed, there's all these three guys who are sort of circling her. But what ends up happening is, and what's kind of where we get the turn of like, where's the conflict here, is that Tom Mckenzie dies, and certain legal things happen, and suddenly it's not so clear anymore exactly whose that money is. Perhaps that she's not going to get this inherit this money, and you kind of get this whole thing of like she herself maybe doesn't have the greatest of self-esteem. She's been kind of this, basically just kind of a nursemaid to dying men for so long that she figures like, oh, if it turns out I don't have any money, no one's going to particularly want to marry me, and it's gonna go from there. And indeed, we have some real trials in the next bit of where the question of the money comes up. There's the suitors, like, how are they going to go things? Because a lot of them do seem to be motivated by money and how they're going to go. Now, it's funny, Anthony Trollope has talked about this novel and said this was his attempt to write a novel without love, but in the end, he failed. And he fails, but he fails in that wonderful Trollope way where the love that does end up developing is really earned, and it's really you feel it. And because Margaret Mckenzie is such appealing, quiet, but when it comes down to it, kind of firm character. And I mean, at a certain point in this novel, I was just like, okay, well, why does she need to get married? It's like, screw it. She doesn't need to get married. Of course, I have this thought, and then the very next chapter, the narrator, sort of Trollope's voice, comes in and says like how basically all women need to get married. They have to. That's just like, it's there. It's always there, and it's always in them. And it's like, that's why she's considering maybe someone so lowly as Mr. Maguire. She is, because she's just got that urge to be married. So we were like, okay. I have to kind of take a step back. I'm a modern reader. It's not going to, this book isn't going to go my way, that way. We're going to have to accept that marriage, both for the woman and for the man, is seen as the natural thing of things. I mean, I'm married as myself, but I don't see it as that's the natural thing that everyone has to do or anything like that. But you get that sense of, this Victorian society, you're going to have to get married. There's just that kind of that thing. Now, the original title of this book was called The Modern Griselda. And indeed, throughout the book, she gets referred to, Margaret gets referred to as the Modern Griselda. And I'm like, Griselda, why is that familiar? And then I went, Boccaccio. He has the Cameron, written during the plague years, are all these multiple stories that these people, they go away into the country and they tell each other all these tales. And one of the tales is about Griselda, and Griselda marries this guy and they have kids, and he decides to test her by saying, oh, these kids, they have to be executed. and she's like, she because she is so obedient and patient, she has to accept this. But of course, he doesn't kill them. He just sends them away to another city, and then he announces, "I'm divorcing you. I've gotten a special dispensation from the Pope that I can go out and search for a better woman, and you go off." And he goes off, and she has to live in poverty and just do hard kind of little and do hard labor. And then like a good long time while later, he says, "Oh, I found a new woman to marry," and he introduces her to this 12-year-old girl and says, "I'm going to marry her." And she's like, "Well, I wish you the best. I hope you have every happiness." But it turns out, of course, that this little girl is actually her daughter. And when she comes to the wedding, it's actually, aha, no, you've proved yourself as a actually worthy woman to marry me. And they get married. And it's this really just bizarre tale of this is supposedly the role model of how a good, a patient, obedient woman would take abuse after abuse after abuse, but still be patient and obedient to her husband. And it's like, it's terrible. And this as a but Margaret as a modern Griselda is actually so kind of refreshing, perhaps because I'm also reading Shakespeare at the same time, is that she's actually someone who doesn't take guff, and that the person that she ends up, the guy who she does end up with, isn't someone who's done something horribly unforgivable that you can no longer ever, you can't even look at them without spitting. I'm looking at you in Much Ado About Nothing, and in Cymbeline, where we both have two romantic leads, male romantic leads that you just want to punch. You would never ever want to have the women who suffered under those guys. You would never want to have. But no, Trllp fashions a story where yes, Margaret kind of goes through some trials, gentle trials, way more gentle than poor Griselda. Goes through trials, but gets to show her worth and actually kind of discover her self-worth, and gets to stand up for herself, stands up against Lady Ball, John Ball's mother, and just, put her place, in that very quiet, kind of tamped down Victorian way. This isn't like, modern, like, someone saying, "Get out, you," this is more quiet, but just like you can feel it. It's like if you're in this Victorian world, you get like, wow, Margaret gets to have her own, which I really enjoy. Now, extra added bonus for Mss Mcknz. While this is indeed a standalone novel, we get the smallest appearance by Lady Glencora from the Palliser novels. And if you are a fan of the Palliser novels, that just warms your heart, even though it is such a tiny little walk on bit by Lady Glencora. But you get a little bit of Lady Glencora, which that's just awesome. That is also just awesome. So yeah, that is my review of Mss Mcknz by Anthony Trollope. This has been my lonely Trollope read for this month. Now the reason I've been doing this is because Steve Donahue over at his channel has been doing his Lonely Trollope read along throughout the year, but he's taken a break for the last couple of months. However, in some recent videos, he has actually talked about maybe he will actually pick up another Trollope for Victober in October. So we should all look out for that, and perhaps we'll get to have a whole big kind of more group reading of an Anthony Trollope novel. But if you're looking for one to read just on your own, I would highly recommend Mss Mcknz, because she's not, Mss Mcknz is not Lady Glencora levels, but I really enjoyed her. Anthony Trollope can write good, decent characters. They're in such a great way. Mr. Maguire as kind of this oily, pushy, self-righteous, never for a moment thinking what he's doing is wrong. A pastor who's like, oh, I'm hunting money, but I'm hunting money for the church, for the good of the people. But at the same time, Trollope showing you he's doing it for his own selfish things is actually a good kind of a fairly good villain in this piece. In that self-righteous, I'm holier than thou kind of way. So yeah, okay. That was my Trollope for this month. More videos later.